get started. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ya Rabbi laka alhamdu hatta tardah. Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'a wa arina al-batila batila warzuqna ijtinaba. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. So in the hour or so that we have together, there's a lot to cover. I don't believe that we're going to cover even half of the content that's prepped, but that's okay. Purpose is not to complete. It's hopefully to begin our journey into taking some of these things a little bit more seriously, inshallah, okay? So I'm going to, don't have a clicker today, so we're just going to sort of, yeah, I don't know, I just wave at you or something. Yeah, great, you the clicker. I've got your remote, you've got your remote there. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, inshallah, let's get started. We are going to be discussing the topic of hellfire. And of course, the first thing to understand, the very fundamental thing to understand, is that there are two versions of the hellfire. Yes, there's a version that's in our mind. There's a version in our mind, and that is shaped by everything our parents have ever said to us, every khutbah that we've attended, the times that we've read the Quran on our own and reflected. And also for some of us, like cartoons and movies and whatever else social depictions of hell that could possibly be. And then there is the actual hellfire. Those are two very different things, right? Why? Because hellfire, just like our conversation about Jannah, are from the mutashabihat, which means there are those things whose meanings we can somehow understand, but their reality we cannot experience in this world. So for example, the comparison between a regular fire that can be on earth versus the actual hellfire is not the same, right? So my father, this is 1989, right? While ago, right? It's 1989. My father was part of a group of people who are on an expedition to collect samples. He was an engineer at a particular gas field in a little town in Balochistan, Pakistan. All right? Yeah, most of you, how many people here from Pakistan? Okay, do you guys know where Sui is? No, you don't, because it's a very tiny village. Nobody knows where this is, okay? Until 1989, the whole world knew it was, because there was a particular gas leak at the in the minefields where the engineers were working, and the entire city burst into flames. The whole city burst into flames, right? And over 65 people burnt, toasted to death on that day. My grandfather was one of them, and my father was on a no survival list for 32 days, which means every single morning my mother would have to sign. My mother would have to sign a document which said that the hospital is not liable if, her husband dies today, because he was on a no survival list and the hospital was wanting to sue, right? And 75% of his body was burned. So how did they, help him get all of the skin? They took the rest of the 25% and once a week took skin, the top layer of the skin from that 25%, and grafted it onto the burnt part. And so that was his state for over 7 weeks. And he told me much later in his life that there's no one who's more afraid of hellfire from his perspective than him, because he experienced a minuscule, minute portion of what could that even be in this world, right? Experience is different. So all of our understanding of the hellfire is all theoretical. Yeah, and now may Allah protect us from these things. The Prophet would make dua often, that Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min zawali ni'matik wa tahawuli 'afiyatik wa fujaati ni'matik wa jami'i sakhatik. The Prophet said, Ya Allah, do not protect me and protect us from any type of calamity that springs upon us and we're not ready for it. So I'm not trying to say, hey, everyone go experience the fire, because Sayyidina Umar would do this. Sayyidina Umar would take his hand close to the fire, very close, and say to himself, Ya Umar, if you cannot stand this, then how dare you think about disobeying God? Because if you can't even stand this, how are you even contemplating the idea of the actual hellfire? Right? So this was very real for these people. Like Sayyidina Hassan al-Basri would, in his backyard had a grave, right? Empty grave that he would go in from time to time. Because it's about the experience, what I'm trying to tell you, that there's a reality in our head of these things, and then there's the experience which none of us are even close to imagining. Even in our deepest thoughts and meditations, we won't get there. Yes? So sometimes someone can feel, well, we're the whole hour long about hellfire. I know what the hellfire is. Let's move on. Right? What's the big deal? Oh, it's bigger deal than we ever think it is. Right? It's much bigger than we think it is. If it wasn't, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not spend so much time in the Quran discussing these things. Right? All of us need these reminders. And if we think we don't need these reminders, then we definitely need these reminders. Okay? All right, see now, let's get started. So, the first verse I wanted to cover as a paradigm to understand what the hellfire actually is perhaps a verse that people might not even associate with the hellfire much. But the balagha in the Quran, the word choice in the Quran is so explicit here, it will force all of us to take hellfire seriously. In this particular passage, there are those who deny God. There's those who deny the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Surah Al-Anbiya. Right? Surah Al-Anbiya is a surah which is rife with stories of prophets and of messengers who are denied by their people, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely wipes them off. Right? So this is the system of Allah on earth. It started with Nuh alayhi salam. He was the first messenger. It finished with the Prophet sallam, the last messenger. Every single time a messenger comes on earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will expect complete and utter obedience to this messenger. And if there is a rejection of this messenger, the people who reject are completely destroyed. The first time that happened on earth was the coming of Nuh alayhi salam. He's the first messenger. And the last time this happened was at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the last messenger. That the rejectors of the messenger are removed from the earth. The earth is purged of them. There's a purging that happens. So all the stories that you read about in the Quran are actually stories of this purging. Hud, people were purged, the Adam. Thamud, his people were purged. Lut, rejection of these people means a particular time is given for people to make tawbah. They don't make tawbah in that time. They are actually removed from the face of the earth. The last time this ever happened and will ever happen was at the time of the Prophet. Right? And so what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in this context? He says, بعد أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولئن مستهم نفحة من عذاب ربك. Right. So if I want to explain this, if I had my clicker, I would actually show you through the laser pointer some of the things that's happening in this verse, but you guys have to keep up, okay? وَلَئِن. In is a type of jumla shartiyah, it's hypothetical in. You know, if this happens, versus compare that to when. When is the shartiyah, which is yaqini, right? It's which, so let me give you an example. If it rains, make sure to pop open your umbrella, right? So is it going to rain or not? We don't know. It's the one need, right? But I'm saying when it rains, pop open your umbrella. Is it going to rain? Yes, because when is more yaqini than if. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَئِن, if, it's hypothetical, right? If, there's a possibility. مَسَّتْهُمْ. Massa in the Arabic language is like a soft caress. It's not a full-out touch. It's not a strike. It's a soft caress. It is what we do when we do wudu, right? The mess we do when we do wudu, right? No one's washing deeply their hair, are they? I hope not. None of the four madhabs allow that. Mess, just pass your hands, right? Bluntly. Okay, if you're wearing leather socks, the madhabs there allow you to do the mess, right? It's the same thing, right? Mess with the ha and massa are cognates. So massethum, nafhatun. So nafha is a breeze. And in the Arabic language, you have the breeze have temperatures. So if it's a really warm breeze, it's lafha with a lam. If it's a cold breeze, it's nafha with a noon. So this is a cold breeze, right? If it was a warm breeze, it would have been nafha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if a cold breeze, nafhatun, a singular, if one cold breeze barely caresses them, massathum, barely caresses them, min adabi rabbik, not from the hellfire, it could have said min an-nar, from the fire. The Quran could have said that. From the hellfire, if a breeze touched them, it could have said that. But it didn't say from the fire. It didn't say min an-nar. It says min adabi rabbik, from the punishment of your master, from your Lord. There's an unsiya there, correct? Because it's our master. Would he want to punish us? No. Right? Min rabbik. Question?
Does the Rabbik put more mercy in the word?
Yes, because of the word Rabb. Right? Because what Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah says, that every time you hear the word Rabb in the Quran, Allah is describing himself as al-Malik, the owner. He's described as al-Mun'im, the one who makes things easy, right? As the Murabbi, the one who looks after somebody. That's the Rabb. So if the one who looks after you and makes life easy for you, if from his adab you get a cold breeze that barely touches you. You understand the verse? I know the English doesn't grab any of that. You go to the English. What does the English say? If they were touched by even a breath of your Lord's coordinates. Yeah, it's pretty good. Dr. Mustafa's brilliant, by the way. Right? This is Dr. Mustafa's translation. It's pretty good. Very hard to do this. I don't envy the translators. They're a very tough job. But I would translate that if there was to be a cold breeze, because you want to make a difference between nafha and lafha, right? That barely caresses, he says, even a breath, barely caresses. Does he use the word touched? Masa wouldn't be touched, right? Be lighter than that touch. Barely caresses. And from where? From your master's punishment. لَيَقُولُنَّ. See that lam after the kaf there, that la, and then the shadda on the noon? It means absolutely. It's emphatic. لَيَقُولُنَّ. They will most definitely say, Ya waylana, we are doomed. From a cold breeze, which barely touches. Okay, if a cold breeze barely touches these people, are they in the fire or outside? Outside. They're not even in there. And they say, oh, we are done for. Ya waylana, it is all over. Ya waylana, it is all over. Inna kunna zalimin. They're confessing all their sins. You know, this is a torture scene. So when you have a criminal and you're torturing them so to get the truth out, you have to actually torture them, right? You can't like turn the fan on, and as the fan turns on, like, okay, I'm ready to confess all the sins that are. That's what's happening. The cold breeze of the hellfire is so much, it's such an experience that people are willing to confess their deepest, darkest sins. Inna kunna zalimin. We have been the wrongdoers. We confess. We are completely do. Yahweh lana inna kunna zalimin. Right? If the coldest breeze of hell is doing this, without even going in hell, then therefore I'm going to leave it to the imagination of what hell is. And this is why Allah does not describe the details of hell. He does this to give us some idea of what that could be. So we get other narrations, right, about people's skins being burnt off and then being resurrected again, skins, so that they could go through the torment again. These little snippets, no details of the vast punishment of hell, because we would not understand it. We would not get it. Because does this make sense? The lightest thing possible is being described, and the greatest confession is coming as a response for it. Right? That should give us a doorway or a glimpse into what is the true nature of hell. Yes? It should give us a glimpse of this. Yeah. Any questions on this before we move forward? Yes.
Does the min make it even more lighter because it's from?
Yes. So it is not the adab. If it was the adab, it will be nafhatu adabi rabbik. Nafhatu adabi rabbik would have been the cold breeze of the master of your Lord. But nafhatu min adabi rabbik, meaning a portion of the adab. It's not really the adab.
Makes it more heavy.
It's, yeah. The min is the ba'id, so it's partitive.
Yes, so like if the torture that's coming is from the most merciful, then
Yes.
this thing is dangerous.
Yes, exactly.
Like there's like a narration like that when people in the hellfire, like that Jibreel like is preventing Allah to look at them because they say like it's if Allah looked at them, He would have mercy over them and get them out.
Yeah, I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah, we can touch upon that. The most blatant evidence for that, I find, is in the hadith, authentic hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ says that one day Jibreel came to me, and Jibreel said to me that, Ya Muhammad, you should have seen me the day the Pharaoh died. Yeah? لما أغرق الله فرعون. Right? The day that Allah drowned the Pharaoh, you should have seen what I was doing. Because remember, they're not just student-teacher relationship, right? They're also they're friends. Once Jibreel salam said to the Prophet, Ya Muhammad, Khadija is about to come into this room. When she comes into this room, you tell her that I said salam alaikum. You don't do that as as a teacher or only relationship. These are friends. He's saying, oh, I tell her that Allah said salam to me. Right. So he says that, Ya Muhammad, you should have seen the day that Allah drowned the Pharaoh. Right. And he described what he was doing. He says, Ana akhidun, that he told me. He said, I was taking the soil from the sea, from the Red Sea, and I was shoving it in his mouth, in the Pharaoh's mouth. He's taking soil from the seabed and shoving it in the mouth of the Pharaoh. A weird thing for Jibreel to do. And then he explains why he was doing that. He said, Makhafatan an tudrikuhu rahmah. I was doing this because I was afraid that Allah's rahmah will reach him. This guy's about to do the shahada. All right. And the moment he said the shahada, he's going to be forgiven. And this guy kills babies for a living. He's done so much torture in his world. And Jibreel is like, not on my watch. That's not, I'm here. No, this is not happening. But who knows Allah more than Jibreel does? You and I, can we claim to know Allah, to have more ma'rif of Allah than Jibreel does? No. He knows his Lord. And he knows Allah's rahmah. And he knows that Allah's rahmah will extend to even this guy. So it's like, not on my watch. I would prevent this from happening. Anyways, I hope this gives us some indication to the severity that hellfire is. Now, I could choose many, many verses and we can do our entire talk on the severity of hell, but this is not this talk, okay? Because we want to be more practical a little bit. And alhamdulillah, there's so much talks out there where you guys can just listen to, and so many khutbahs in your life that you'll hear about the severity of hell. I just wanted to suffice with just one verse to set the tone. And to me, this is the most severest of the verses in its nature. We'll just move forward, inshallah. Okay, so firstly, it's very important to understand that the boundaries that Allah have. One of the words that are used for the people of hell is طاغين. طاغين. It's a common word, right? فأما من طغى وآثر الحياة الدنيا فإن الجحيم هي المأوى. طغى, طاغين, طغيان is to cross the limit. Yes, Rajab describes this word as the crossing the boundary. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a hima, the Prophet explains. He has a boundary. And crossing over that boundary is crossing over the limits of God. So this is a verse in Surah Al-A'raf, which talks about only 5 things that are considered crossing the boundary. It's that easy. That's how simple our religion is. This is 5 things. That's it. 5 things. Because why do we know this? You see that innama at the beginning, qul innama, that innama tufidul hasr. It means only these things, nothing else after that. It's giving it restriction. These are the only things that can land someone in the clutches of hell, that are considered things that are crossing the boundary, things that are considered haram. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says? بعد أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنما حرم ربي. Allah, your master, my master, say to people, Ya Muhammad, my master has only made the following 5 things haram. Right? Number 1, al-fawahish. Ma dhahara minha wa ma batan. Shamelessness of any type, whether it's outward or inward. Acts of shamelessness are considered haram. Number 1, category 1. Category number 2, wal-ithm. Ithm is all those things that break the covenant of God. So for example, Allah has told us and made mandatory us to pray 5 times a day. And if we meet the conditions and the shurut apply that we pray 5 times, or we pray the next prayer, and we do not pray the next prayer, that is an ithm because we are breaking our covenant with God. This is a very interesting concept. A lot of Muslims don't understand this, but this is a permeable concept in the Quran. It's all over the place that we have a covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And every time we break that covenant, there are consequences. For example, if there was someone who's here who drinks alcohol and they're not a Muslim, there is nothing wrong with this person, even in a Muslim country, even in a Shari court, even if this person lived in the Khilafah of Umar, nothing would happen to this person. But if a Muslim was to publicly drink alcohol, there will be state consequences against this person. Why? What's the difference between these two? One person is the covenant with Allah and he broke that covenant, and the other person didn't. He's not in a covenant with Allah. Do you see the difference? If a non-Muslim steals in Umar's Khilafah and all the conditions of hudud of the cutting of the hand apply to this person, their hand is not going to be cut because they're not in the covenant of God. They're not Muslim. But someone who is Muslim, it's not just your regular person now. You're someone who is saying, I'm a representative of God on earth. That's what that means. And so as a representative of God, that's treasonous act. You breached your covenant. It's treason. And therefore, that's why the Quran mentions the hudud and says, Nakala min Allah. This is a consequence from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not about theft. It's about the fact that you said that you're going to be a godly person. You're going to be a Rabbani. Everyone's supposed to look at you and be pointed to God. And you did this. Oh, that's not okay. Right? So that's ithm. And then you have one baghiya bighayri haqq. And that is to take away someone's right without any right. It's to say, take away someone's honor without any right. So backbiting, theft, all of these sins that are haram come under this category of al-baghya bighayri haqq, to dishonor someone without any right, right? To trespass over someone's haqq and their that. And then number 4, and tushriku billahi ma lam yunasil bihi sultana. That's to either take a creation and elevate them to the level of creator, or take the creator and denigrate the creator to the level of creation. That's the only 2 ways shirk happens, right? Association with God happens in 2 ways. You can either take something created and give it godly attributes, that's shirk. Or you can take Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, na'udhu billahi min dhalik, and denigrate him to attributes of the creation. Those are the only 2 ways shirk will happen. And so what that is the 4th category, any type of shirk. And finally, number 5, وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That you say about God that which you do not know. Right? You say something on behalf of God, you say something about religion, and you don't have the right to say it. You don't have the knowledge to say it. You don't have the authority to say that. This is it. Now, anything that you know which is haram, guess what? It fits into one of these 5 categories. The reason why I say this is because these are our hudud. And as long as you say under these hudud, we are qualified to be be salvaged from the fire. But the moment we cross these, right, then we have to do some sincere tawbah to get into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's grace. Okay? So it's a very important verse. So it's the qualifications of who avoids the fire. Right? Those people who avoid Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world, the fire is made haram for them in the next world. That's how simple it is. Okay, let's move on to the next. Right. So we'll have a whole slide on this, like a whole presentation, which I did at another campus. But just to quickly go through this, what is the nature of the dunya? The Prophet explained the nature of the dunya as a dunya, sijnul mu'min wa jannatul kafir. The dunya is a prison for the believer, right? It's a prison for the believer, and it's a paradise for the disbeliever. What does it mean, prison for the believer? When you are in prison, do you have a warden that dictates how your schedule works? Yes. So for a believer, we have a warden. We're lucky, our warden is very beloved to us. That's a different issue. But we do have a warden over us, right? The Prophet whose sunnah dictates our schedule, right? So we are actually mimicking the Prophet's schedule, by the way. In our daily life, we're trying to mimic his schedule because he's our warden, because we're supposed to be prisoners, right? My teacher called it, it's the prison of love. He says that every time he teaches the hadith, the dunya sijn al-mu'min, he said the sijn is the sijn al-hub. It's the prison of love. Because if your warden is the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that you are fully in love with, and you love him more than you love your family, your children, and he's the one who's your warden, this is the prison of love. And you know that everything he's telling you to do is out of love. Because a warden will tell you to do things out of anger. Because you're a criminal, trying to punish you. And the Prophet is trying to save you. Right? So that's what he is. He's the warden of our lives. Right? In a prison, do we get to have the freedom to do anything that we want? No. No, you don't. A prison has certain things that you can do at certain times, and then other things you can't do. And there's certain things you can never do. Right? That's what a prison is. The only difference between the prison that prisoners are in now, like in the penitentiaries, and our lives, is that this is just a bigger prison. And it gives us the allure that is we're free. That's all it is. And what does it mean to be a Muslim? What does it mean to be a Muslim? Like Istislam. What does Istislam mean? Submission. You submit to the fact that you're in prison, that you have laws over you, that there is a had that you have to be inside. Right? You voluntarily submit yourself to the prison. Like someone who has addictions. So they enroll themselves into a program so they can get therapy. And when they go to this therapy program, do you think they can do everything that they want? Or they have a particular schedule to follow that the therapist sets for them, right? At the rehab centers. So we understand that we're sick people and we need the rehab of the Sharia to fix ourselves. And so we all voluntarily enroll ourselves into this rehab facility. And you want to see the formalized version of that? It's coming out. It's Ramadan. That's the formal rehab, right? Where you have a morning regiment, evening regiment. You can eat certain things from time to time that you can eat outside the rehab facility. So outside of Ramadan, 1 p.m. you can have a nice lunch. Inside the rehab, with this facility, you can't because you're in rehab. And so we're all sick. And so what Ramadan does is that puts us into 30 days of rehab so we can now be normal and go to people again. We can go out of Ramadan and be normal. That's what it is. But our whole Sharia is like that. It's making sure that we are in a regimented program because it's a prison that we're in. You know, someone came to Hassan al-Basri. He was on his horse. And he said to Hassan al-Basri, you Muslims, he wasn't a Muslim. He said, you Muslims are funny. You guys are going around saying Muslims are in prison. Because in his Hassan al-Basri time, there's a lot of affluence in the Umayyad time. So lots of affluence in the Umayyad Abbasid period. Muslims are very rich, right? Like Sayyidina Umar used to write letters to the Sahaba who were governors and say, hey, such and such Sahabi, you should walk to the masjid barefoot. Because I feel like you guys are getting too spoiled with all of these, luxuries that you have around you. He was worried, Sayyidina Umar. Like, man, I think if Sayyidina Umar was like watching us and like, oh, these guys are the religious people, right? And then you look at the luxuries they were enjoying, like, God. But who did his tarbiyah, Sayyidina Umar? Who did his tarbiyah? The Prophet ﷺ. And remember the famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ was once sleeping and Umar comes in and he gets up, the Prophet ﷺ, and Sayyidina Umar is talking to him and the Prophet doesn't have a shirt on because he was sleeping on a straw mattress. The Prophet's back had all of these, the entire straw mattress, the pattern was on the back of the Prophet. Sayyidina Umar saw that. Of course it's uncomfortable. He saw that, he started crying. He said, Ya Umar, why are you crying? He said, Ya Rasulullah, you're the messenger of God. And this is your life. And the kings and princes of Persia and all these people, look at their lives. And the Prophet said that you're comparing with them. Aren't you happy that we have the akhirah and they have the dunya? Right? So that's the tarbiyah of Umar. So when he's in power and when he sees all of his governors enjoying luxury, he's sort of having a moment. He's like, I don't think this is very good. Start walking barefoot. It's like, maybe that would fix it. Right? So he sees us in our luxuries. I don't know what he will say. But that's the nature of the dunya, right? It's no friend to us. Yes. وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَتَاعُ الْغُرُورِ. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, dunya is just trying to deceive you into thinking it's something it's not. Makes you think it's important. You know, I have high school students in my school, right? And like they're graduating next year and they're going to go to these universities and everyone's worried about getting in and scoring in there. You guys remember that? You guys remember being like that? Okay. And everyone's hyper focused. They just went through exams right now. So everyone's like cramming, studying. And this was their last exam today. So I was sitting with them after the and I was telling them, guys, calm down. It's just exams. It's just dunya. Right? You should be more concerned about the actual examination where you do get your results. Yes, like we all have to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every single one of us, one by one, fardan wa fardan, right? There's no like, your mom's gonna be with you. There's no hookups, none of that. Fardan wa fardan, everyone individually. And we have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's questions. And at the end of that examination, it's an oral exam. It's not even written. It's an oral exam. We're gonna get the results either in our right hand or in the left hand. And the guy who gets it in the right hand, he's gonna yell, this is in the Quran. This is in the Quran. Look, everyone read my book, look at this. This guy's having a blast. Right? And the guy who gets it in his left hand, he doesn't even keep it in his left hand, he puts it behind his back. You know what? He doesn't even want to see it. Right? I'm telling these like 15, 16-year-olds stressed about exams, when there's a bigger exam. You don't ever compromise that because of this. And if you do, this is the trickery of the dunya, to make you think that these things are important. When it's not important, none of this is important. The Prophet said, if this was important, Allah wouldn't have given it to the non-believers. If dunya was important to Allah, He wouldn't have given it to the non-believers. It has no worth, no worth. But it convinces us that it's important. It convinces us it's a big deal. And that's the trickery of the dunya, according to the Quran. Right? That's why there's a very interesting question in the Quran. And everyone thinks it's rhetorical. Right? Abu Hayyan al-Tawheed has a really interesting tafsir on it. There's a verse in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nas, ma gharraka bi rabbika al-kareem. Yeah. Oh human being, what distracted you from your generous master? Yeah. What happened? What distracted you from Allah? What was it? He's asking us, Allah's asking us, what distracts you from Allah? And Abu Hayyan al-Tawhidi says that Allah's rhetoric is so beautiful in this verse because he says that وَدَعُ الْجَوَابِ فِي السُّؤَالِ. Allah put the answer in the question. I mean, say the question again and you guys will see the answer now that I told you how to read it. Okay? Look at the question. Oh human being, what distracted you from your generous master? What distracted us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah's generosity. It's Allah's generosity. Allah gave us so much that we get caught up with those things. We forget these things came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like that 3-year-old that you give a lollipop to, and so they forget to say thank you, and the parents have to say, hey, did you say thank you to uncle who brought the lollipop? And they're like, oh yeah, thank you. That's what we're doing. All of us doing that. We just get caught up in like our things, our little things that Allah has blessed us with. Yes, and we forget to take something. Like that, at 6:15, when you're trying to wake up for Fajr, that 3-pound blanket, which feels like 300 pounds that you have to bench press, right? And when we're doing that, do we forget that this sleep is the blessing that we have to say thank you for by praying Fajr? Right? So the generosity of Allah is making us so distracted that we forget that it's from Allah. What distracted you from praying Fajr? Allah's generosity of the comfort of sleep. It is always the ni'mah that distracts us from the mun'im. Right? And that's the nature of dunya, to make us think that the ni'mah is more important than the mun'im. That's the distraction of the dunya. Yes? Question?
Warraka, is it just distraction or is it more like what deceived you?
Warraka is deception. Yeah, warraka is for ghurur. But mata'ul hayat dunya, it's like the tool of this world, a meaningless, distracted tool. Yeah. Asma'i, the great grammarian, he is like, I don't know what mata' means. Because in his tribe, they didn't use that word, but the Quran uses it. So he went on a field trip. That's how Arabic language was collected, by the way. People don't appreciate this. Asma'i is a grammarian, he's a linguist. So he didn't understand what the word mata' meant. So he went to the Bedouins and he lived with them. And he waited for them to say the word. Right? So one day, this little girl, she's combing her hair, right? And he's just observing her. And then she just says that this comb is the mata that my mother gave me. And it's like, oh, mata means something which has no significance. Right? That's how we know what the word mata means. Because that's mine. Who went on a field trip to figure that out. Anyways, interesting how the Quran is preserved so meticulously by this early generation, by the early scholars. Right. So I'm going to talk about the devilish arrows for the rest of the presentation. It was supposed to be the next 40 minutes, but it's going to be the next 15 because we're out of time, but that's okay. So there's another slide for the devilish arrows that we'll do inshallah. Let me just finish the rest of the stuff. So there are certain things that we have to be very careful about when it comes to the hellfire. There's a repeated motif in the Quran and in the prophetic sunnah of the importance of the human tongue. Okay, it's a repeatedly, you cannot ignore it. And the reason I'm saying this is because younger people, specifically people around the university crowd, high school crowd, and with your friends, language is something that we're not good guards over. We just are not. Okay, and so for example, the Prophet said in authentic hadith that perhaps a slave of Allah will say something, and it was distasteful to Allah. In sakhatillah. It was it draws the anger of Allah, and because of that, they'll be thrown in the fire for, in one riwayah, 700 years. For speech. Yes, for speech, for saying something. Right? And then they say the person didn't think it was a big deal. They didn't think it was a big deal, but it was something distasteful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to have that sensitivity of speech, right? To really have that sense. That's why the Prophet said, Man samata najah. Whoever is silent, this person will be successful eventually. Right? He said, in an authentic riwayah, Imam Nawawi has it in his collection of the 42 hadith of Imam Nawawi's Arba'in, that he says that Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawm al-akhir. Whoever believes in Allah and the last day, فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرٍ. Let them only speak the truth, أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ, or let them remain silent. Meaning speech, which is negative, it's better not to speak. It's better just to be quiet. You don't have to talk. We feel like we have to talk to people. When we're with someone, you feel like you have to talk. No, just smile. They say about smiling, al-ibtisamatu kalimatun tayyibatun bighayri huruf. The smiling is a beautiful speech without any letters. Right? So you don't need to say things. Just a genuinely heartfelt, nice smile is better than saying something that you're going to regret later. That's why when the Prophet was asked, Ya Rasulullah, just give me some advice, make it very quick. So not a Sahabi. So Bedouin was asking the Prophet said, لا تكلم بكلام تعتذر منه غدا. Don't say something that tomorrow you're going to be remorseful over, that you're going to have to make an excuse for. Just don't speak. It's better not to speak. Right? That's why he said, Ya Rasul, the Prophet said that whoever can guarantee me the safety of what's between their jaws, right? What's between their jaws, you can guarantee me the safety of this, and what's between your thighs, right? Which is our lust. If you can guarantee careful speech and chastity, I will guarantee you Jannah. You know, when we're studying this hadith with the Shaykh, he was giving us his isnad and ijazah. This is in Bukhari. We were studying with him. He was teaching us this. He said to me that, you know, what I find so interesting about this hadith is the two things that people always say, I don't have control over. It's like, I just said it. I wasn't thinking. And it's the same thing with lust, right? Same thing with lust. People fall into sins, right? He says, those are the things the Prophet was saying, guarantee me these things, as in be guards over these things. Because one day, if you fall, you're going to say, I didn't really mean it. People say that all the time. But it's always an afterthought. The Prophet is saying, don't let it ever go there. Guard these things. So tongue becomes very, very important. That's why some of the Arab poets, and Mutanabi included, he said, I wish my neck was a mile long. Because if my neck was a mile long, I would have said something and I'd have time to think about it, and then I'd close my mouth before it comes out. Right. Or some of the others who said your tongue is the prisoner behind the cage of your teeth, as if your teeth are like prison bars. Right? So it's convicted of many crimes. So don't let it out until it's in good supervision. You don't trust your tongue. Just don't say things. Because you don't know what's coming out of that mouth, right? Yes.
So like a mute person, has he passed his test already?
So there's other examples. So for example, in Suhaili's understatement, Imam Suhaili talks about this, and he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests people with the things that Allah has given them. Right? So a test for a mute person would be perhaps higher on the eyes than it would be on the speech. Right? Because the test is going to be there. It's just going to be displaced from here to somewhere else. Right? Like the alim, their tests are different than the non-alim. Right? Like men, their tests are different from women. So it's specific. Our tests are all specific to us. That's a good question.
What about like some people in the other Sharias pass for a mute, like a mute fast? Like,
Yeah, which is in the Quran as well.
but it's in our Sharia?
No, we don't have that, but we, according to many of the ulama, including Imam al-Qurtubi, that fast is abrogated. Right? In our Sharia, we don't have a fast of no speech. But you find evidences for this in our Sharia as well about the previous nations. Like you find there's a book, really interesting book called Walking on Water. Like it's collections of hadith in like Rizin and other hadith books that are not commonly known to like us, but scholars know about, like muhaddithin study these books, where there's a man who comes to Isa alayhi salam and he says to him, give me some advice for Islam, like make me a righteous person. So Sayyidina Isa told him, from this day onwards, do not speak. So he leaves. And he comes back a few days later and he says, of course he broke his system because he's talking. He says, yeah, that's not happening. Like I tried it, it just happened. So he says, okay, now give me something lighter. He says, okay, only speak when you must. Right? If you don't have to speak, then don't speak. Right? So speaking is very important. Kalam is min abwab al-hikmah. Lessening your speech is from the doors of wisdom. Right? And that's why some of the ulama said this is why Allah gave you 2 ears and 1 tongue. So you listen more and you speak less. You observe 2 eyes, 1 tongue. You observe more and you speak less. Right? Simon Sinek, you know, the leadership guru, he says the exact same thing. He said great leaders speak very little. And they speak at the end. They let everyone speak. I found so many hadith like this, where the Prophet would speak at the end. He would let everyone finish and then he would say things. And modern research shows that that's the prime way of good leadership, good governance, because everyone feels that they've been heard. Because if you go in as a leader and you say your opinion, do you think everyone's going to share their opinion now? No. But if you just say, so what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And you get everyone's good ideas and you say, well, I don't know, what do you guys think about this? Then everyone feels like they were part of that conversation. Yes? So it's from the majestic traits of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he would speak less. That's why he says, "Utitu min jawami al-had." Allah gave me a power, that Allah gave me the ability to speak less and mean more. Not what I'm doing, you know, I'm speaking a lot, I mean very little. But the Prophet's power was that he would speak less and he would mean more. That's why if you come to my library, and if you go to the hadith section, there are books, sometimes volume books on just one hadith. Right? One statement of the Prophet, and here's this alim, or here are these ulama who are writing books on that one statement of the Prophet. Books, volumes of books. Right? Hadith commentary. Go into anyone's library as a hadith scholar, look into hadith commentaries. And the volumes of books on the speech and the meanings of the words of the Prophet. That's Jawami al-Kalim. And that's sunnah, by the way. The sunnah is to speak less and mean more. We have to all practice this.
In Urdu, we say samundar ko kuze mein.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? To harpen an entire ocean in a particular bottle. That's the idea. Okay? Brevity of speech. Right? Brevity of speech. Okay, so what is the philosophy of fear? We, in our tradition, fear is real. Fear is a good mabahid. It's a motivator, right? If there was a snake, if I told you for a fact that there was a snake crawling somewhere here, all of you would put your feet up, right? You would. You wouldn't say, hold on a second. Is this a poisonous snake or not? If you were certain that there's a snake in this room, the first thing that would happen is you would put your feet up. Okay? You would. So fear works. And if you know that fear is going to, this thing is going to lead to your detriment, to your harm, then you will do everything in your power in that capacity to make sure that you are not part of that. So fear is real. And the thing about fear is that we are asked in the Quran to fear Allah. We are asked in the Quran to fear Allah. But that fear is not fear as in the fear of the snake. Right? That fear is the fear of disappointing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those are two different things. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word, the major word in the Quran for fear is not fear, it's taqwa. And Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani defines that word in his Fath al-Bari, and he says, what is taqwa? He said, taqwa is أن تجعل بينك وبين عذاب الله وقاية. That you put a barrier between yourself and the punishment of God. It means you do whatever it takes to not disappoint Allah. Isn't that different from fearing Allah? See what the Quran says. وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ. For the one who fears standing in front of Allah. Because what happens when we're on the day we're standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What are we afraid of? We're afraid of all those moments where we disappointed Allah. Is that not the case? And therefore, we're all supposed to be afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid of disappointing the one who we have no reason to disappoint and every reason to please. We have no reason to disappoint Allah and every reason to please Allah, and yet we disappoint Allah. We should be afraid of that. And that fear should come with shame. Right? That's what the Yawm al-Akhirah is about. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we will humiliate some people. And He says that we will never humiliate a group of people. النبي والذين آمنوا معه. The messenger and those who are amongst them, we will never ever do any khizi of these people. Never humiliate. Why? Because when people are feeling that they are going to be judged, everyone is going to look at what's happening to them. They will feel humiliated. And Allah says, we will never let this humiliation happen to those people who served us and put us first. Right? So can we go to the next slide? I'm going to do the devilish arrows, but we won't have time to do any of them properly. So I'll just go over this. Maybe next time I'm here sometime, whenever, we can do the arrows. This is all practical stuff now that we should be mindful of. Right? Yeah. So the Quran has this statement multiple times that all people who claim to believe do not follow the footsteps of the devil. Right? So if the shaitan is leaving breadcrumbs for you, don't go following the breadcrumbs to the candy house and then get eaten. Right? So that's the idea. Sorry, technical difficulty.
No, enable editing.
Oh, it's there. Oh, that's there. There we go. Okay, so yeah, you الذين آمنوا. Sorry, I'll get there. All right. All people who claim to believe that تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان. All people who claim to believe do not follow the footsteps of the devil. All right, and so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in passages of the Quran outlines these footsteps. So it's very wise for us to know what the devilish footsteps are. It's akin to installing a caller ID on your phone. Are you guys old enough? You're all younger than me. Are you guys old enough to remember when phones didn't have caller IDs? Like you had to pay extra to get caller ID. Are you old enough to? So there used to be a time where nobody had caller ID. You had to pay like $7 to like Rogers or Val per month to get caller ID. All right. So every phone number, you have to either memorize your family and your friends' phone numbers. Otherwise, every phone number was like random. Okay. And so if you had caller ID, you would know, oh, it's dad calling, it's mom calling. Yeah, it's this friend calling, it's that friend calling, right? All right. So what is ilm? What's knowledge? Knowledge is installing in our hearts a caller ID. So when we get a waswasa from shaitan, we know who's calling. And when we know it's shaitan calling, we don't have to pick up. We don't have to take this call seriously. You let it go on voicemail. All right? You don't want to give attention to a waswasa of the devil. But that only comes through knowledge. Right? So one of the greatest motivators to save yourself from the hellfire is to know that we're in a game in which we are being tricked. And as long as you know the rules of the game, you won't get tricked. Because every time someone tries to trick you, it's like, that's not part of the rules. That's not part of the rules. And so how do you know the rules of the game? It's through knowledge. Is it? And this is why the Prophet said, فَقِيهٌ وَاحِدٌ, a single knowledgeable person, أَشَدُّ عَلَى الشَّيْطَانِ, is more severe to the plans of the devil than 1,000 worshippers. 1,000 worshippers are on one side and one knowledgeable worshipper on the other side. The shaitan will have a more difficult time with this one knowledgeable person to delude him into tricking him than 1,000 worshippers. 1,000 worshippers, easy stuff for the devil. Look what's happening in the Muslim world. Weird things are happening. Weird things by sincere worshippers of Allah. Easy to trick. But with knowledge, it becomes very difficult to trick people who are grounded in knowledge, right? And so we go to the next slide. So let's explore some of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about this, and then we'll conclude. So this is Surah Al-A'raf. Shaitan makes an oath in the Quran to Allah, right? You see that double emphasis here too in that fourth word. لَأَقْعُدَنَّ. You see that lam first and then the noon with the shadda, like we saw, the yaqulunna over there in the first verse. So he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah, you abandoned me. The audacity on the devil. Say this, anyways. He says, you abandoned me. You let me disobey you. Why didn't you stop? Right? You let me disobey you. And because you abandoned me, لَأَقْعُدَنَّ لَهُ. I am going to lie in ambush for your service. So he is now waging war with God. This is the verse where Iblis declares war with Allah. But Iblis knows he can't fight Allah. And that's why it's not Allah versus Iblis. Because, if we do that, that's type of shirk. Right? Imam Musani and others, they say, because to have an opposite is having someone on the same playing field as you. And God has no one on the same playing field as him. So it's not Allah versus the devil. And that verse clears it. He is angry at Allah. He's waging a war with Allah. But through who? Through us. It's us versus the devil, right? And so he says, Siratak al-Mustaqim. I'm going to lie in wait, right? Qa'ada is not like jalasa. Jalasa is what you're doing. You're all sitting down. Qa'ada is to sit down and wait for the right moment to stand up. Right? So he's saying, I'm going to lie in wait for the right moment. And he says, where am I going to sit? Is he going to be where some of the students are right now, who happen to be Muslims, who are engaging in a lot of the things that they shouldn't be engaging in? Is that where the devil is? He's not. According to the verse, the devil is right here. Because where is he going to be? Siratak al-Mustaqim. He's at the straight path. The devil's not after those who are already gone. He's after people who are trying to be on the right path. Okay? If that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. Knowing that there's an unseen force waiting specifically for you to have a weak moment so he can step up and mess you up. That's what his name Khannas means, by the way. You know waswas al-Khannas? Khanasa is this. Khanasa in the Arabic language is to do this. So when you have an opportunity, you step up. And when you don't find an opportunity, you go back down. That's Khanasa. You can't be caught. Right? So most people, when the devil is doing the waswasa, don't catch the devil. Because the moment they're onto him, he backs off. That's what Khannas means. So the moment our faith is weakened, we are not in the right state of mind. We're not committed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're in the wrong company. Right? We're having weak iman moments. The shaitan is right there. And the moment we strengthen ourselves, we change our company, we start doing more dua, we purify ourselves, we start reading more Quran. The moment we're there, he has to back up, he doesn't have a choice. That's what his name means. And so he says, Thumma, then I will come to them. Now he's talking about the attack. He first talked about his plan. His plan is to wait by the right path, just wait in hiding until people have a weak moment and then pounce. So where does he pounce from? He says, Thumma, la'atiyannahum. I am going to pounce on them. Min bayni aydihim. From right in front of them. Wa min khalfihim. And right behind them. Wa an aymanihim. And from their right side. Wa an shama'ilihim. And from their left side. وَلَا تَجِدُ أَكْثَرَهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ. You're not going to find most of them to be grateful. Most of them are going to abandon you. That's what he means. Like you abandoned me, right? So I'm going to make all your slaves abandon you. Because what is shukr? Shukr is us recognizing Allah and His blessings. And when we don't do shukr, we have abandoned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is ghafla, right? So that's his plan. Now the ulama say, the Quran has key moments of brevity. It doesn't do this, attack from the front, back, right, left. It would say attack from every direction. That's quicker to say in Arabic. Min kulli wajh. From every direction is quicker to say than that entire middle part of the verse. So why doesn't Allah use more brief speech? Why does He spread it out? So many of the Mufassirun said, because this is the game plan. This is the devil's playbook. And then we go into how the Arabs used front, back, right, left, and it uncovers a lot of things. So for example, does anyone know what sinister means? Sinister. Yes.
It's another name for him, right?
It's another name for devil, yes?
It's your left side.
It's your left side in Latin. Sin actually means left. Yeah, in Latin. That's what sin means. Sinister is evil. Why? Because the left side is associated in ancient cultures with evil. Right? What does it mean in Arabic? What's the word to take an oath in Arabic? Oaths are called what in Arabic? Mithaq, ahd, qasam. It's also called ayman or ayman.
Right.
Right. So because when I do an oath, as I'm doing an oath with Abdullah, I'm gonna strike my right hand. This is how I give bay'at to him.
Yeah, amen.
Yes, what be aymanin. So this is an oath. So right means when you're doing something good, and left means when you're doing something wrong. This is embedded in the language. You can't escape it. Okay. Front means those things that you're aware of, and back means those things you're not aware of. Okay, so what is the devil saying? He's giving us his game plan in the verse. He's saying, I'm going to attack them from the right. Meaning in those things they're doing good deeds in, I'm going to try and mess them up. I'm going to attack him from the left. Meaning in those things that they're sinning, I'm going to encourage them. I'm going to attack him from the front. Those things where they see what's right in front of them, I'm going to confuse them about that. And from behind them, when they don't know I'm there, I'm going to pounce on them there. Okay, and so can we go to the next slide? Right, so in the front, it's what you see, the dunya. Right, what you see in front is the dunya. It's immediate gratification, right? And so the dunya and its pursuits are going to be glorified for the devil. The devil will glorify that for us. So for you guys, he is going to aggrandize knowledge to such a degree that you don't fulfill the rights of other people in your lives. That you break Allah's covenant. You don't pray because you're busy studying. Because what you see in front of you, the exam date. That's what's in front of you. So because of that exam date, God goes on the side burner. And so isn't he right? Didn't he get some of us? Because many of them are not going to be grateful to you. It's going to distract them through what's in front of them. Okay? Yes.
What are the
Go ahead. Consequences not factored in. Because when something's right in front of you, you don't factor in the long-term consequences. The long-term consequences, are they in front of you or are they far ahead? They're far ahead, you can't see them. What do you see in front of them? Just the thing itself, not the consequence of that thing. Yes? Keep going. The true future blocked up with the allure of the immediate future, right? This is exactly what I just explained. And so we could go on and on. Let's go to the point 2 and 3. I'm just going to do a quick list for you. Okay, worry and anxiety about the future, right? Which is in front of us. Distractions from things that we're supposed to do. Okay, go to the behind them. So things that we're not we don't have access to. So about our past. All of these things are relevant to all of us, by the way, right? So isn't it things that about our past that keep us sometimes from doing great things in the future? So for example, not learning important lessons from the past. If something important happened in our life, but the devil is going to ensure that we don't contemplate on it much, because if we contemplate it a lot, we'll find all this ibrah. We find all these lessons in it. Becoming hopeless for the future due to past experiences, right? So for someone, for example, who had one bad experience with someone, they're like, whoa, I won't ever deal with this again, right? Glorifying negative aspects of the past. So perhaps we made tawbah and now we're a righteous person, but we used to do some shady stuff back in the day. And glorifying those, like you're sitting there, those are the good old days. Really? You were sinning against God. How is that the good old days? So glorifying that. Reminiscing the good past and ignoring the present and the future. So we see this a lot with our parent generation, right? Reminiscing the past, those are good days and all that, and not doing anything to make today good, right? See that? Blaming Allah for past experiences, which is a type of fitna as well, and then tricks them unexpectedly. All of these are things that happen from behind people, yeah? Their past is behind them, but also their behind is what they can't see. So whisperings and embedding those thoughts as if it's the person's own thoughts, like inception, in putting an incepted thought. You think it's you that wants this, but it's not you. It's the devil that wanted you to think it was you, right? Customize waswasa based on each person's habits, life, memories, right? Customize waswasa. One of my teachers said, you know what the devil is? If he had a job, what the title of the job? Marketing. He's the head of marketing. This markets bad ideas. And it makes it so good that people just fall for it. It's good marketing, right? We're in a hall, we're in an exam hall once studying for an exam, it's like third year. I was in a crazy program that I don't recommend anyone to go into, pure math at Waterloo. Okay. And so we were in a third year, we're studying for exams. And right before the exam, there was this screen in SLC, right? The Student Life Center there at Waterloo. There's a screen there, display advertisements. And Tim Hortons had this ad, and we hadn't eaten anything for a while, running this ad. And it's like, wow, after the ad, everybody, we were noticing, everybody left to go get coffee, or to get something. We're like, that ad works, man. That's such good marketing. But imagine someone who's been doing marketing from the time of Adam. What experience is that? That's experience. Yes? And you think people weren't similar to you and me in the past? Like 200 years ago, 400 years ago, we didn't have someone who had similar personalities as us that the devil's already dealt with, right? He had a PhD in marketing, right? And then we're up against him, and we got to make sure we have a PhD in how to make sure we don't fall for it. Yeah, absolutely, bro. You can do Taqwa Academy anywhere. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's go to the next. So I'm going to skip through this because I'm going to show you some other stuff, inshallah ta'ala. So right side, beautifying one's deeds. So when arrogance kicks in here, right? So when you're doing good deeds, you feel like you are entitled to Allah's rahmah, and other people you start looking down on because of the good that you do, right? Using knowledge against the person. So when you learn a lot of fiqh, you also learn a lot of hiyal, right? Like, for example, you understand that, okay, if I travel this much, it's suffer. It's travel prayers. All right, so I'm just going to take a longer route to get to my destination, and I'm a traveler, right? So you basically try to do all these hiyal because you know knowledge, you know fiqh.
Is that enough?
Hiyal are not allowed. So the prayer is valid, but the sincerity is questioned. Yeah. So what's the point of a prayer that you don't get any reward for? The prayer is valid, but you might not get any reward for it. Okay. Number 3 is being extreme in religion. So you become so extreme in religion that you drive everyone else away from it, right? Number 4, misprioritizing deeds or unwarranted focus on certainty. So some people are so laser focused on this one particular sunnah that they let go of all the other major sunnah and fara'id because of this one thing that they're so focused on. These are all attacks from the right. Let's analyze some attacks from the left. Oh, giving precedence to one's own understanding of piety over Allah's description of piety. So Allah has a way that He describes good people, but you have your own way of describing good people. Anyways, left side, driving one towards sin and away from goodness. Yeah. Dexterity is the Latin word for goodness. It means right. Right. So keep one away from beneficial knowledge. Right. So self-reform. Remember we said without ilm, none of this is possible. Glorifies bad company and negative role models, despair, heedlessness, and sloth, and glorifying the pleasures of disobedience. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, and here is the bottom line. Yes, what did he say? You will find most of them ungrateful. Do you know why he say that? Right there. You will find most of them ungrateful. When he attacks from all of these places, he's able to convince people. Okay, let's look at Shaitan's oath in Surah Al-Sad. He says, قَالَ فَبِعِزَّتِكَ I swear by your honor, Ya Allah, I am most definitely going to misguide every single one of them. إِلَّا عِبَادِكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصُونَ Except those people who I'm unable to misguide. And they said that who are these people? They are the mukhlisin. Those people who are pure. They are people who have made sure that their lives are actually being lived for God. They're pure in their endeavors. They're pure in their intentions. They're pure in their outlook. And so can we go to the next? Right. Your chosen slave. So let's summarize this very quickly. All right. So Imam Shaqiq al-Balqi, he says, ما من صباح, there's not a single morning إلا قعد الشيطان على أربع مراسم, except that shaitan sits and waits to pounce from four directions. من بين يديه ومن خلفه وعن يمينه وعن شماله. From right, left, front, and back. Those are the four positions that we learned from Surah Al-A'raf. أما من بين يديه يقول, if he attacks you from the right, you should say, لا تخاف فإن الله غفور رحيم. Yeah, you should say, okay, if I slip and fall, Allah is Ghafurur Rahim. Says, فَأَقْرَأْ وَإِنِّي لَغَفَّارٌ. He quotes the Quran. لِمَنْ تَابَ وَآمَنَ. For those people who seek repentance and they believe, وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا ثُمَّ اهْتَدَى. And then they're guided. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَلْفِي. And if he attacks you from the left, then no. وَمَا مِنْ دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا. If he attacks you from the back, then know that Allah is officially in charge. If he attacks you from the right, know that وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. In the end, the people of Allah win out. And if he attacks you from the left, then know that حِيلَ بَيْنَهُمْ وَبَيْنَ مَا يَشْتَهُونَ. Right? So anyways, the point that I'm trying to drive here, and I know I rushed the last couple of slides, but that's okay. The point that I'm going to drive here is that you have to know you're at war. You have to know you're at war. And if you know you're at war with the devil, then you have to get an army going. Where's your army? Your army has to be your righteous brothers and sisters who are also part of the same war. They're also being targeted the same way. You'll have to have reinforcements. Where's your weaponry? Your weaponry are your good deeds. You have to have a general. Your general is the messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All of us are in this war, whether we like it or not. Some of us just know we're in it. Can you imagine someone's in a war they don't know? How long are they going to last? Like they're in the middle of a war and they're not aware that they're in a war. Right? Inna shaytana lil insani aduwwun mubin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for a fact, the devil is your clear-cut enemy. Right? Take him as one. In one place in the Quran it says, why don't you take the devil as your enemy? I don't get it. Why aren't you taking the devil as your enemy? What's the procrastination for? So once we know we're in the battleground, then we have to make sure we're aware. We have to make sure, oh, this could be a trap, this could be a scheme, this could be a trick. And we have to be on our guard. Because if we're not, we're just following the footsteps. We're just being herded wherever he wants us to be herded. Right? So it is on us, every single one of us, to equip ourselves with enough knowledge to recognize the follies and the tricks of the devil. So I'll leave with the 6 arrows that I got from my Shaykh, that he said that if you master these 6 things, then the devil is at a distance from you, right? The first one is that the devil's first arrow is the arrow of ignorance. He is much happy with people who aren't even aware he exists. Yes, the usual suspects, you guys know the famous quote, the usual suspects, everyone know? That the greatest trick that the devil ever pulled is to convince people that he doesn't exist. That's the greatest trick of the devil. Convince people that there's no such thing as the devil, right? Because those people will not be looking, they won't be aware. Okay, so the first thing is knowledge. So how do you deflect this arrow? You become a student of knowledge. You learn. Because when you learn, you will not be, it won't be tricked easily. Number 2, the second is that once you learn, the next thing is the shaitan will come and convince you that you're better than everyone else. It's kibr. And that's why the Prophet said, لا تدخل الجنة من كان في قلبه مثقال ذرة من الكبر. You will not enter Jannah if you have even a small amount of arrogance in your heart. Right? And so the devil is going to convince us that because we know things, that we are better than others. The second arrow is the arrow of arrogance. How do you deflect that? By becoming humble. The third is the arrow of not arrogance per se, but not acting on what you learn. So learning for the sake of learning. So the devil will glorify knowledge and the culture of knowledge and memorization and lectures and notes. But when you're by yourself and you actually have to do the things that you put notes on, yeah, no energy for that. You have all this energy to stay in, learn, do notes and memorize and review and listen to lectures and follow these ulama and pay attention to all these talks and all of this. But when it comes to actually doing good deeds, yeah, I'm so tired today. Can't do it, right? So glorifying knowledge over action, right? So that's number 3. Third arrow, to glorify the pursuit and distract people from the maqsad, right? What is the purpose of knowledge? Well, to transform yourself, right? Number 4, the fourth arrow is giving a lure of negative company, making negative company, bad people around you, something that you look forward to because they happen to, I don't know, be funny or be more interesting. Oh, the righteous people are boring, you know? It's like praying and studying and eating halal and all this stuff, right? It's all these cool guys, you know? Those guys are fun, you know, getting high, making a fool of themselves. It's the glorification of evil. So that's the fourth arrow. So maybe someone has knowledge. They are humble. They act on their knowledge, but they hang out with the bad crowd. How long do you think number 1, 2, and 3 is going to last? How long? It's a matter of time that they're going to be convinced with their surroundings to transform themselves. So that's number 4, righteous company. You deflect that arrow by righteous company. Number 5, the fifth arrow is the arrow of sincerity. If someone is doing all these great things, then the arrow of sincerity makes it that you're doing it so that other people look at you and say, look, what a great human being this person is. So it removes ikhlas, right? So you coming and you, for example, I tell all my students this, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you a position in which you are writing an article, you are conducting a class, you're giving a Jummah khutbah, right? If a moment passes in your heart that this is somehow to do with, look at all these people listening to me, yeah? And you aggrandize yourself, that is the day the devil wins over you. Because that's an arrow of the devil, to make this all about me. Like as if everyone is here because my name was on the flyer, right? That is exactly what the devil would want you to think. Because if you're convinced of that, then none of this is part of my good deeds. None of it, because it's not for Allah. Right? So the fifth arrow is to convince you that all the good you do is to aggrandize yourself. Right? And finally, the sixth arrow is of what's called burnout. We call it burnout, right? Of lacking sabr or grit. Because when you're doing righteous things and you're doing it for a very long time, it's tiring. You guys ever had that after your last exam, you go and you have the sleep of your life, right? Like you're asleep like a log and you have someone has to like really like poke you to wake you up.
Police has to come.
Yeah, the cops have to come. Yeah, exactly. Like it's exactly. Right. I have the students who did their exams today. Their last exam was yesterday, actually. And the one guy told me, said, I haven't slept in 3 days. And I said, you probably failed all your exams. Yeah. It's a horrible idea, man. It's like writing grade 11 physics and functions exams, right? Like horrible ideas in the thinking and inquiry section. You probably failed those.
And next exam was to write an essay on sleep deprivation.
No, this guy, I'm pretty sure he did horrible. And then I told him that go home and sleep, right? So he messaged me and I said, but you message me when you wake up, but because I know what he's gonna knock out, it's not waking up. I said, that's your exam. That was your dunya exam, this is your akhirah exam.
But they're in the dream.
Yeah, definitely. But because that's what my teacher used to say. He said, you want to know what a chivalrous man is? So I'm gonna be at, is it McMaster this year? Yeah. So I'm gonna be at McMaster in a few weeks talking about Judah, right? Or masculinity in Islam, manhood. And so one of the important things that my teacher once told me is that you know what the true mark of a man is? And we all said, like, what is it? He would always do this and he wouldn't answer. Right? And he would say, I'll tell you. And then we'd have to keep reminding, you said this. And he said, one day he said, the true mark of a real man is that they go and attend the Fajr at the masjid after having buried their parent the previous day. And they go attend Fajr at the masjid after their wedding night. And they go pray Fajr at the masjid after having a child born to them. Because those are all times where we feel like we should be prioritizing someone other than Allah. And so that's the definition of a true man, that no human being can come between them and Allah. Not their child, not their passed away parent, and not their spouse that they were just intimate with like millions ago. That's what a true man is. Right? Anyways, you guys, so we're like 10 minutes over our time. I hope this was beneficial to some degree. Of course, these presentations are not things that I say this all the time, but this is just the milk al-ilm, right? It's the salt on the meal of knowledge. This is not the meal, right? I recommend everyone who study, you're all studying here anyways. That means you're all students. Yes, you're in a study mindset, study the Arabic language, study the recitation of the Quran. Don't think all of these ulama were once people like you. And they just started taking their ilm seriously, so Allah opened doors for them, and Allah gave them futuhat. Okay, so you're in study zones, find teachers locally that you trust, that you are going to connect to, and then stay with them for 10, 15, 20 years until you become proficient in these things. Yeah, and you guys are all students, you're learning all of these things. There's one more course to add, that's it. Okay, and so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you, your progeny, very, very far away from the insinuations and the whispers of the devil. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tools to fortify our hearts against the waswas of the devil. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to recognize truth for what it is and follow it. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to recognize falsehood for what it is and refrain from it. اللهم ألف بين قلوبنا وأصلح ذات بيتنا واهدنا سبل السلام ونجنا من الظلمات إلى النور وجنبنا الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن وبارك لنا في أسماعنا وأبصارنا وقلوبنا وأزواجنا وذرياتنا وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم.